Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The calls for justice are echoing once again for a young First Nations woman who died at an Eastern Ontario hospital. With prayers, songs, and a round dance, they gathered at St. Catharines Park. Here's Annette Francis with more.
Family, friends, and supporters have come to remember and honor Heather Winterstein.
So we're just here to remember that life that she had and to honor the family and come here in community, because this is an ongoing issue. It's not just one person. Indigenous lives are highly undervalued in the Canadian state.
The 24-year-old First Nations woman died a year ago of strep A. The night before she died, Winterstein was sent home with Tylenol from the St. Catharines General Hospital Emergency Department. It's been a tough year for Heather's mom, Francine Shimizu. She's thankful for the community support. She even brought along Heather's urn for the memorial round dance.
I just want to honor her strength. I want to honor her perseverance. You know, she was such a special individual. And because of this, I believe that something great will happen. I believe that. Something good will happen of this.
Earlier this year, Niagara Health did an internal review and shared it with the family. They have announced it will also be conducting an external assessment of the emergency department. Lisa Augustino is a registered nurse. She says there needs to be a collective call for action across Canada to stop things like this from happening to Indigenous people in the healthcare system.
We're hopeful that Niagara Health System will take this on and can be the start of something incredible that will spread across Canada to implement change.
For now, Shimizu has found an activity that helps. She calls these her grief rocks.
I paint them and I bring them to one of the flower beds at the emergency department. It's my passive protest. I just don't want people to forget.
The family and community have been calling for a coroner's inquest into her death, but have not yet had a response. According to Niagara Health, the external assessment will conclude in 2023. Annette Francis, APTN National News, St. Catharines, Ontario.
In Winnipeg, activists are planning more action this week to pressure the Winnipeg police to search 2 landfills for the remains of the victims of an alleged serial killer. The group Urban Warrior Alliance staged a blockade Sunday at the Brady Road landfill and a smaller protest at the Prairie Green landfill. Leanne Sanders has more.
Members of the grassroots advocacy group laid down tobacco and lit a sacred fire for the victims whose remains are believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill. Police said last week they believe the remains of 2 First Nations women, Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris, missing since spring, are at the privately run Prairie Green landfill, north of Winnipeg, while the location of the remains of an unidentified 4th victim hasn't been determined. The first woman tied to the case was Rebecca Contois, whose remains were discovered in the city's Brady Road landfill in June, where people were turned away by the protest over the weekend. Police have been under fire by activists and MMIWG family members since announcing last Tuesday a further search for remains had been ruled out. Since then, operations at Prairie Green have been suspended. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg Centre NDP MP Leah Gazan was part of meetings held this weekend with the Winnipeg Police, the city, First Nations leadership and family members about continuing the search for victims. Leah joins us now. Leah, thanks for taking time for us. You were at some meetings on the weekend with police and the city. Can you tell us how those went? What was said?
Well, the meeting, was not just with representatives of the city, the mayor, but also families. And I think it's important for elected officials and other members to listen to families and follow up with action. We need to start doing more than listen. We need immediate action to deal with this ongoing genocide.
While these meetings were going on, I guess there were also actions taking place at two landfills here near the city, blocking people from getting in. Are we any closer? The one landfill, they've been paused work out there. Are we any closer, do you think, to seeing a search happen?
Well, I think what is very clear to me is that there's a complete breakdown in trust between many Indigenous people, certainly many families of MMIW G2S, and the police. And, I think at this point, at the federal level, I'm certainly not opposed to, calling on the federal government to call on the UN Special Rapporteur for Indigenous Peoples to come down and provide whatever oversight they can. Certainly, one of the mandates of the Special Rapporteur is to provide oversight or to address specific cases of violations against the rights of Indigenous people. Certainly, the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls has been likened to a genocide by the current Prime Minister. And I think, the severity of this, of the cases requires that kind of oversight, especially when there's such a breakdown in trust.
Do you think the federal government could be doing more to help push along this search?
Well, certainly I've called on all levels of government to support the search. The federal government is not innocent in this. Let's not forget the National Inquiry. It's been a few years since it came out. 231 calls for justice. Where's that at? Where's the funding at? Certainly not in the 2022 budget. That provided zero funding allocation to address the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. This is a crisis. This is a human rights, life and death crisis that's getting attention globally, and the federal government needs to immediately act to address what's going on, including providing whatever support necessary immediately to perform searches, not just in Winnipeg, but across the country.
Leah, what should be taking place right now?
Well, I mean, the fact that we're having this discussion to begin with, the fact that the genocide against Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit has been so normalized that families are begging to have landfills shut down so that garbage isn't placed on the remains of their loved ones. I can't think of anything more violent or anything that reeks of a normalization of genocide. We need to first accept this normalization and act to change it. Families deserve closure, and we in elected positions need to do whatever needs to be done to ensure families and our communities have closure.
Leah, we'll have to leave it there, but again, appreciate you taking some time and for all the work you're doing here on this.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, a candlelight vigil and rally was held in Vancouver last night to honor murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls.
Single calls to action that our Indigenous people have put forward. All levels of government have severely failed our Indigenous people, and this is why serial killers are coming after our Indigenous women, and we need to stand up.
Attendees were mourning the deaths of the 4 Indigenous women from Manitoba believed to have been murdered by a serial killer. Well, we always want to hear what you have to say. Here's how you can provide your feedback. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. It's the 25th anniversary of a landmark court ruling. That story and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. This weekend, Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan nations celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Delgamuukw case decision in BC. But decades after the Supreme Court of Canada recognized their Aboriginal title, they're still fighting to protect their land and resources. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en nations hosted multiple events in their communities in northern BC to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Delgamuukw Gisteway Supreme Court of Canada case. Chief Satsam, who played a large role in the case, praised the courage of their leaders and chiefs who won a major victory for Aboriginal title in 1997.
Who had the courage and the discipline to bring this action forward on behalf of, as they put it, our children and all future generations.
A truckload of fellows drove by, hollering at the hereditary chiefs that were in their regalia, mocking them.
Multiple speakers shared their first-hand accounts of the hostility their leaders faced in and outside the courtroom when they started the case against the BC government in 1984. Satsam said colonization and oppressive acts like residential schools and the potlatch ban set leaders in motion to file the lawsuit.
Made illegal to practice our own governance and our own ceremonies, to be on our own lands. And our chiefs and our people long to take back their place, to be able to fulfill their responsibilities and obligations.
Peter Grant was one of the lead lawyers for the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en and the Delgamuukw case. He said the Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan set out to have the court tell the government of BC and Canada what they already knew. Through their clan governance, they had title to their lands.
So as I said, Gisteway and Delgamuukw spoke before any lawyer said a word. That's really important because that was the control of the case, and no other Indigenous case had ever started that way before. No other Indigenous case was controlled by the people.
In the Git'en Max Hall, the walls have pictures and quotes from their leaders involved in the Delgamuukw case. They are remembered for their contributions. Speakers at the event shared how the nations presented their evidence in Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan languages, sharing their oral histories. Multiple translators worked tirelessly to produce documents.
Packets for each of the lawyers. There's a bunch from the feds, the province, our own lawyers, judge. So there was quite a pile of paper we were dealing with, and sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning we'd be still trying to staple this together, you know.
Hagwalna was one of the translators for the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs in the court case. He remembered the passion their elders spoke with in Delgamuukw.
I could still hear them, how passionate they were. And all of them pretty well said, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my children, my grandchildren, my unborn great-grandchildren.
Although 1997 is a historic decision that says Aboriginal title exists and it's a right to the land, the court could not determine whether the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en had title to the land they claimed without a new trial. A new trial has not taken place. Conflict over resources in these nations is ongoing. Neek, George Moldo, stated that reconciliation is not happening if the government is taking their resources without their consent.
It takes two to reconcile, and that's not happening. They're taking millions and millions of dollars of our resources away from us as we speak. They're still selling all our lands privately to foreigners. On and on and on.
Moldo, who was speaking on behalf of Delgamuukw, said the best option was to go to court once again, but he added that would be a decision for the chiefs to make together. Hanamo shared since doing his part in Delgamuukw, he has been working with Secwepemc people for more than a decade. He encouraged everyone that they will need to work together to battle climate change and to finish the work the Delgamuukw case started.
That the work that we started is not finished. That's the message from me today. You have to finish, you have to keep working on this type of information because it tells us of where we came from, what we're doing today, and where we're going.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Get in Max.
Thanks, Lee. While Nunavut may have experienced rapid economic growth prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, there is an ever-widening gap between those who have reaped the benefits from work and those who are out of a job. Our Charlotte Moore Jacobs takes a look at how one hamlet is providing job training to community members.
Nunavut, a territory with the youngest and fastest growing population. And despite potential for quicker labor force growth than other parts of Canada, in some of the 25 fly-in communities, unemployment rates are as high as 40%. According to recent Statistics Canada data, here in Kuluktuk, the rate sits at 30%. That's why the Kitikmeot community is backing a 2-month pre-employment course.
Thank you so much for coming to Kuluktuk.
Roxanne Halla is a mother of 2. As a pre-employment participant, she's been job shadowing with the territorial government's Economic Development and Transportation Department.
I had doubts. Yeah, I never had confidence in looking for a job because I didn't have a resume finished. And taking that, I learned to do a cover letter, a resume, and a resignation letter.
Pre-employment instructor Ray Dix says the goal is to teach transferable skills and empower those who have spent some time out of the workforce.
We did setting goals, budgeting, self-esteem, violence, family violence, lateral violence. One of the things is childcare. I mean, I think the birth rate in the north is so much higher, and you know, like I've got a participant that's got 6 children. Single mom, and I mean that in itself.
Across Nunavut, income inequality is worsening. While government and mining employees live in one tax bracket, there's other folks being left behind. The program also looks at what holds Kuluktuk back from gaining and retaining work and how people can break free from cycles. The group chooses a barrier to employment and for a final project takes action to tackle that issue.
You can present your mom-in-law.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Go really far with this.
The issue that they did, which was food insecurity. So we talked about all those issues, and as the issues came up, individuals had experienced some of those issues themselves. For example, domestic violence, food insecurity, alcoholism, drugs.
In Kuluktuk, there's no food bank, so organizations like the Elder Society and Mental Health work to fill in the gaps. Pre-employment participants raised nearly $3,000 to help that cause.
And this is going to help our community where we've done the serve and go. We usually do it on off pay weeks.
It'll be very good for everyone too, especially the ones who needed and need food to get by.
The course wraps up in mid-December with 4 graduates. And already, Hala has a job interview for a position as a student support assistant.
I'm actually excited to look for a job. I have so much confidence in myself.
Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Kuluktuk.
And you can see more of Charlotte's stories from Kuluktuk over on our website. Time to step aside for another break. Still to come, a look at some Indigenous IT wizards. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And this one was sent in to us from Patrick Primo. Patrick tells us this is the setting sun from the beautiful Muskeg Lake Cree Nation located in the heart of Saskatchewan. Thanks for that, Patrick. We want to see your photos. You can send them to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at Tuesday's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, -1 with snow for Halifax and Charlottetown. -3 in Kuujjuaq, +1 with snow in Nain. -3 in Montreal, cloudy and 9 below for Val-d'Or. -1 in Sault Ste. Marie, 8 below for North Bay. Snow and +1 in Thunder Bay, cloudy and -1 in Sioux Lookout. -8 in Churchill, 2 below with snow in Norway House. -1 in Winnipeg, -2 with snow in Brandon and Dauphin. 12 below with snow in Regina, -16 in Saskatoon. -17 and sunny for Meadow Lake, 16 below in La Ronge. Over in northern Alberta, -14 in High Level, 12 below with snow in Fort McMurray. -7 in Edmonton, -9 in Lethbridge. +2 in Vancouver, 5 above in Victoria. -7 with snow in Prince George, flurries and 8 below in Smithers. -19 in Old Crow, 7 below for Whitehorse. Snow and -14 in Yellowknife, 17 below in Norman Wells. -20 with snow in Sax Harbor, 19 below and snow in Paulatuck. A new program is helping train Indigenous IT specialists for First Nations communities, widening the sphere of learning as connectivity grows in more remote locations. Here's CTV's Jill Makashon.
On Broken Head First Nation, north of Winnipeg, computers are used for everything from learning to paying the bills. Just like any other community, this one relies on technology every minute of every day. But when something goes wrong, help is not always available.
We don't have an IT professional in the community right now. Our IT is outsourced to Winnipeg. So if we need any type of services, it could be anywhere from 4 to 24 hours for them to come in and repair.
So our client here dropped the laptop a couple of times.
That's where Ramsey Desjardins comes in, a young man who grew up in this community. He's now learning all about information technology. Jasmine Benoit is too. She did a career reboot, leaving a job in early childcare to become an IT technician.
Software issues, hardware issues, network issues, printing issues. We do a lot of troubleshooting and diagnostic testing.
She hopes to work in her home First Nation when she graduates the program. That's the motivation behind this project.
We're going into First Nations communities. We're bringing the training to them.
Partnering with the Southeast Resource Development Council, an Indigenous industry group, 2 technicians in 3 different Manitoba First Nations are now learning to work in IT. And there's talk of expanding the project to more northern and remote communities.
A lot of these communities are starting to add fiber and getting better connectivity. And so we want to be proactive in having those individuals that can support that technology.
Supplying the experts that are so desperately needed.
And the fact that we have so many businesses that are growing, I think over 210 staff members in Broken Head, we need this.
It's different, but it's also fun because you get to learn how things work.
A new opportunity, a digital dream job close to home. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Broken Head First Nation.
Thanks, Jill. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Monday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.